Hey everyone, this is Faizan from Kaiser Permanente Digital. Uh, it's great to be here back at DSC Conf. It's a great event. I'll be giving a talk on search and recommender systems for healthcare. So this is actually a series of talk. This is actually the first in a series of talks that I gave in this space in healthcare. So I'll be talking about why these areas are so important in healthcare at this point in time, and what does the future look like, right? So let's get started. I think most of us have experience with search engines, right? So you're either using Google or Bing or Baidu or Yahoo for your search needs on the internet. But we also have this area of domain-specific search engines, right? So if you're shopping online, you most likely go to Amazon or Target or Zalando in Europe. So these are what we call domain-specific search engines. So search being an essential service across the internet for either just general information needs or for specific domain-specific needs, it's a very important function. So what does that look like in healthcare space, right? So that's what we'll be diving into and seeing what's the state of the nation in healthcare for search and recommender systems, and why is this an area of focus right now. So just a few points on what's actually happening in healthcare at this point in time, right? So there's a big digital transformation that's taking place. So compared to other domains like maybe finance or e-commerce, a very small portion of healthcare companies have gone digital, right? So, if you see the stats over here, we only have 7% of healthcare companies that have gone digital compared to 15% in other industries. And I also have some few big numbers here. So the healthcare market is massive, it's in trillions. And of course, like as I said, healthcare is a very fragmented, regulation heavy industry, but it also has lots of opportunities for applying data science and artificial intelligence in this space, right? And we know that over the past 2 years, things have been very challenging in this space, right? Due to COVID, there has been a shift taking place in healthcare, where previously people used to go into their health clinics or hospitals to seek information, or perhaps call in via phone numbers or so. But now, because of COVID, there's there has been a big shift, right? So people started seeking information online via digital channels, via chatbots, via internet services, search. So there is this big awareness in the healthcare space that the industry or this domain is not where it needs to be in terms of adopting digital transformation, right? So that's the core focus. Digital transformation in healthcare is needs to be turbocharged, and we need an operational warp speed for the space, right? So as we saw, we were able to build a COVID vaccine and within a year, but it used to take 5 years. Now we need the same kind of call to action, bias for action in the digital healthcare space. So it has been lagging for many years. Now it's time to catch up to other domains and industries. So that's what's causing this sense of urgency in the space. So in terms of like information seeking, right? So the digital tooling in the healthcare space, search, recommender systems, chatbots are the key, are some of the very high profile key items that we need to tackle. But but we do encounter lots of barriers to access this information, right? So here are the three key items that we need to tackle. The first one is findability, right? How can we find the right resources to get our healthcare information, right? And how can we actually perhaps, like, if you're using search to get information, how can you actually get that information using the right terminologies, right? So we have this barrier to entry in terms of finding the right resources, and also what tools can we use to actually access those resources. The second issue we have is in terms of comprehensibility, right? So the healthcare domain, the medical domain, is a bit more unique in terms of the terminologies being used, right? So there's a higher barrier to entry in terms of understanding the medical terminologies as compared to some of the online shopping domains, for example, or just any other domain. So there is a risk of misinterpreting and not clearly understanding the information that you are being given. So how do we overcome that? That's the second big challenge. The third one is context awareness, right? So in healthcare, like, the information that you provide uh, or that you're accessing is actually depends on the context, right? So depending on, for example, you might, if someone is, you might have a medicine that may only work if you have certain conditions, right? So not, so it may be possible that like the information that you are given, it's only applicable if you are, if you have certain conditions. So context awareness is very, very important in healthcare. So these are some of the things that we need to tackle via digital tools and techniques, and of course, search and recommender systems are what we will have to adapt to these, have to actually overcome these barriers. Right? So let's dive into seeing. So we know that yes, we all can access information through Google and Bing and other web search engines, but we also have access to certain domain-specific search engines, right? So these are what we call the medical search engines. So some examples are here on the slide. You can see WebMD has been there for a long time, Medline Plus, PubMed. So these are search engines that domain-specific medical search engines that you can use to either access general search information or healthcare article information, right? So they have they have some specialized use cases. So we do have medical search engines that have been there since the mid 90s. Right? And how do we tailor this experience? So we have two different use cases, right? So the user of these search engines can be a non-expert, like typical members or patients who don't have that detailed medical background. And you can also have users who are experts, right? Like physicians, nurses, practitioners who have more comprehensive medical topic information. So the experience for healthcare search for these two customer bases can vary a bit, right? So we'll go into that in the next few slides. So now, as I mentioned in my first slide, that we have healthcare information. We have access to the general web search engines, right? Google and Bing, for example, and then we also have domain-specific search engines. So here are some stats on how the general web search engines are being used to get healthcare information, right? So a large percentage, over 80% of internet users have at some point in time searched for medical information using those general web search engines like Google, for example. Right. And then 5% of all web search queries on the internet are health related, right? And so these are stats that show us that yes, there is a big need for accessing healthcare information via search engines. And here are some samples of the common types of queries in a session. So most for a large percentage of these search requirements focus on symptoms, right? So people might be experiencing certain symptoms, so they may go immediately on Google or Bing and try to see, okay, what are those symptoms, right? They may also look for causes, right? They want to know, okay, I'm experiencing certain symptoms like headaches and stress. What are possible causes of these symptoms? And of course, people want remedies, right? And so symptoms, cause, remedies are the largest bucket of search queries. And then there are also some other areas where people like to seek information online. People want to know information about doctors that they can go to, right? Facility information, hospitals, for example. They may also want to know information on insurance, which is a big deal in the US. And of course, any health-related food safety recalls. Those are the other secondary categories. But the vast majority of information seeking is on symptoms, causes, and remedies for this. So let's going back to our expert versus non-expert search, right? So as I mentioned, experts are the physicians, the practitioners, nurses versus non-expert, who might be the lay people or the non or like customers or patients, right? So here are some trends, right? So non-experts are more likely to use web search like Google or Bing, and that's most likely because they may not have information on these domain-specific search engines like WebMD and other ones that I showed just a few slides ago, right? Experts, on the other hand, have more detailed information on the medical domain, so they are more likely to have information on these domain-specific search engines, which they can leverage. So we have these usage patterns where non-experts are trending more towards general web search engines, and experts are more likely to use the medical search engines. But we also have to see that there is a gray area, right? So we are making a decision between experts and non-experts. But what if there's no guarantee that someone who's an expert in a certain medical area like cardiology are they also more likely to be an expert in some other areas? like maybe like something like diabetes. So basically, so this categorization between experts and non-experts can get a bit blurry in certain areas. So just a quick example of the queries that you might see. So this is just a sample from certain websites. So you can see that the queries that experts are more likely to enter for their information seeking needs on search engines are a bit more complex, right? So they are able to use some of the more like clinical terms like limbus vertebra, uh, cystitis, cystica, and so forth. While if you see the examples of search queries on the non-expert side, right, they're more straightforward in comparison, right? So like they're using terms like diabetes, pregnancy, COVID, trustworthy health sites. So just from this just from this list, it's very easy to see that yes, there is a difference in terms of the complexity of search queries that experts and non-experts use, right? And and in this case, what we also see the trend of that experts are more likely to reformulate their search queries, so they're more persistent, right? Because they have this innate domain knowledge, they are able to reformulate the search queries. They are able to persist more during sessions. So all of those are characteristics that we see when people are searching, when experts are searching, right, versus non-experts. So this is just to keep in mind that the experiences for both sides can be a bit different in terms of the information requirements and how they actually access search. And finally, like there has been a trend that has accelerated more because of COVID. This is known as self-diagnosis search, right? So this is a search that people conduct before they consult a medical professional, right? So before going to a doctor, most likely you have access to a search engine. You will, if you are experiencing symptoms, you'll go online, type in those symptoms, and see, okay, like what's going on with me, right? And as I mentioned, right, there's a lot of opportunity to improve that search experience because we have issues with relevancy. The most accurate information is not coming up online, especially on the general web search engines, right? So, so there's also we also have to be cautious, right? People may actually jump onto a search engine for their symptoms and diagnosis, and it's possible that they may not understand some of the articles or documents or information that comes back, and if they decide to take action based on the information that's coming back from search engines without consulting the medical professionals, that can be an issue, right? So we have opportunities to make sure that the information that comes back is as accurate as possible, and also ensure that the non-experts or the people who are looking for the self-diagnosis view this as a first step and not as the concrete resolution to their symptoms and issues. So this is an area which of great importance, which can have an impact if people don't follow the medically prescribed rules, right? And finally, as I mentioned, right, there's a lot of opportunity for search to improve search in the medical, in the healthcare domain, right? So this traditionally this area has lagged in terms of access to data sets, resources, focus on this area. But things are changing now because of the digital transformation that has been enforced on the industry by COVID over the past 2 years, right? So I just want to share this TripClick resource. These are logs of the TRIP database search engine. It's a medical search engine used by experts to search for healthcare articles. So this is a great resource to get started with. It has over 5 million interactions, right? Search user interactions, including searches for COVID-19. It can be used for experimentation, for IR batch, for creating information retrieval benchmarks to improve search, and to build really powerful models to understand queries, and also to actually build ranking models to improve search. So we hope to see many more of these open source data sets to drive improvements in healthcare search. Uh, I'll just share a few slides on recommender systems for healthcare. So we all have experiences with the recommender systems. So if you shop on Amazon, Amazon starts giving you recommendations that, hey, you bought this, now you can also buy these other items, right? We have also experienced this on Netflix. Netflix is a big driver of innovation in recommender systems. If you watch certain movies, Netflix will start recommending you movies that you're more likely to watch as well. So it's a very powerful system that is the counterpart to the search ecosystem, right? So the search, if you view search as a pull model where you have an information need and you're translating those needs via search query and pulling information from a resource, while recommender systems are what we call the push model, right? So the system knows something about you, your preferences, your interactions on their website, and the system then pushes some content or information to you that you may be more likely to interact with, right? So this is the push and pull model that we have in search and recommender systems. So how does this look in healthcare, right? So once again, in healthcare, the systems are very similar, right? So yes, we have patient interactions on any healthcare portals or websites, but we also have domains. We also have healthcare information, right? So we have information about patients from the electronic health records, right? Now, once again, as I said, the systems are similar in terms of the data that we can use to power recommendations, but there are certain differences as well, right? So the quality of recommendations is very, very important in healthcare because unlike some of the industries like e-commerce in healthcare, if you make the wrong recommendations, right? I mean, if you say that, okay, well, if you have, we see that you're looking for information on COVID, and if you recommend or show content which says, okay, go ahead and drink bleach, that can have really drastic ramifications. So it can have an impact on your life. So content becomes very important, right? It has to be trustworthy. It has to be verified, right? So recommenders, uh, so recommendation in healthcare have this trustworthy and verified content a clause that they have to satisfy. You can't just recommend any information. So what can we recommend in healthcare, right? So there are several use cases that we can tackle. We can recommend a lifestyle change information, right? Physical activities based on your profile information, right? And it can be personalized depending on location and weather, right? So if you're in California versus in Atlanta, the systems can recommend you, okay, go and jog, or if you're in California, you might be more likely to be advised to go for yoga and so forth, right? We can also recommend nutritional information, right? So you might be recommended diet plans, right? Okay, if you have certain analysis in your profile and so forth, and certain conditions, right? If you're trying to reduce weight, for example, so that recommender systems can recommend really optimized diet plans for your specific needs. We also have some really other interesting use cases like disease and diagnosis information, right? This has an overlap with the search use case, right? So we also have options for recommending treatment and therapy information, right? So you might have certain diagnosis, and the healthcare recommender system can recommend some treatment plans and so forth based on which are, of course, verified by the physicians, right? And we can also recommend like healthcare, like doctors and hospital information, right? So if you have certain diagnoses, right, so the system can recommend, okay, here are the doctors and hospitals that might be a good fit based on your diagnosis and also your certain personal needs, right? So we have all this information, tons of options to recommend. But once again, there are challenges, right? So we have to make sure that we balance the user preferences with the profile information. So as an example, if if the user profile says, okay, I prefer certain kinds of food, but the diagnosis counteracts that, so the recommender system should take both the user preferences and the diagnosis into account. As an example, someone who's diagnosed with diabetes should not be like recommended trans fat food items, right? Despite the fact that they may have mentioned in their profile that, hey, I prefer eating fried chicken. That's an example. So, so that this part is very important, and then of course we also have to ensure that we recommend that the recommendations are really persuasive, right? I mean, if the users can't act on the recommendations, or if they don't trust it, then this is not really useful. So we want to ensure that we attach some USD information, some official information with the recommendations that, hey, this is not just some automated system. We have some justifiable action that you can go ahead and apply here. And finally, trust and privacy are massive issues, right? So as we go into healthcare, people want to make sure that they are getting information that's really, really important. So trust is extremely important, and privacy as well. Some people in healthcare, right, they may not want their EHR, their personal records, to be used for for providing some deep recommendations. So these are two big areas that we're tackling right now, really active areas of research in healthcare recommender systems, and lots of challenges to tackle in this area as well. And so just to conclude, right, there's a rise in the healthcare space to actually drive the digital transformation, right? So because of COVID, digital transformation in healthcare has taken big importance across the industry, right? And search and recommender systems are going to be the drivers of that innovation in this space, right? So traditionally, these are two areas that have not been given a lot of prominence in the healthcare space, but now that's changing. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of progress to make, and I think this is a hot, active area that people across the data science space should look into. And yeah, that concludes my talk. Here are some references that people who are interested can look at. Uh, and if you have any questions, I can take some questions. Are there any questions in chat or anywhere? Sure, good. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. If you have any questions, if anyone has any questions in this area, I think we may have a few minutes to answer. All right. So I think we are over time. So if you have any questions, you can please feel free to contact me via LinkedIn, or and I'll be glad to connect and answer any questions you have. Thank you all